All right, great.
We're going to go ahead and kick off. Cherry,
Yes.
you said go ahead and kick off. Well, thank you, everybody. I know people will keep joining us hopefully in the next few minutes, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we hope this time is beneficial to you, and definitely give us any input and any questions we can't answer tonight. We're going to try to collect and answer those and get those back out to you as well. But just thank you so much, because the budget is really for the community and us working together to try to manage our resources to best allocate towards your needs. So definitely feel free to ask any questions. And thank you so much for Rebecca and Hannah and Ed and Danielle. All these are some of our experts at the city for taking time out of your evening to come and share with the community. I know you're used to doing that, but appreciate it on the budget side too. And thank you so much.
Cherry, you're muted.
Bound to happen. All right, so wanted to take a moment just to walk you guys through our agenda for the evening. We're going to kick off with a short presentation of our budget, a quick overview just to get you grounded for our conversation. From there, we'll hear from our mobility team lead. We'll also hear from the director of our Housing and Neighborhood Services Department, Rebecca Hefner. And finally, we'll hear from Daniel Frazier, who leads our efforts around workforce development. After that, we'll jump into some breakout rooms. Within our breakout rooms, you will be able to actively engage with our presenters. So please ask questions, raise your hands, leave comments, provide feedback, because this is truly meant to be a conversation. And it takes at least two people to have a conversation, and you are one of the two. So with that, we'll get started with our presentation, and I'll turn it over to Hannah.
Great. Thank you, Cherry. So again, thank you everybody that's here. My name is Hannah Braunberger. I'm the Assistant Director of Strategy and Budget at the City of Charlotte. And this is our final engagement for FY 2026 budget that we are working on producing. The manager will propose the budget in early May. And so we've had several community engagement meetings. It's sort of built like a series. And so for those of you that have been able to join us multiple times, I'm going to try and sort of tie it all together real quickly before I hand it over to our experts. Next slide, Sherry. So you may remember that the City of Charlotte is a council manager form of government, which means that we have a strong manager system. And so our manager is the administrator of all of our activities, and our city council is used to create policy and to advise him. So our structure is we have one mayor that is elected by the entire city. We have 11 council members, 4 of which are elected by the entire city. And typically the at-large member that receives the most amount of votes is appointed mayor pro tem, but it doesn't have to go that way. That's just sort of practice rather than policy. And then we have 7 council members that are elected only by the residents within their council district. And all of those members serve 2-year terms. Next slide, please. So the role of mayor and city council is really to create policy, to give guidance to the city manager so that he can then direct staff to go and execute upon the policy that they have set and sort of the direction of the city government that they have set. So they identify strategic priorities that support the growth of the city, and they review and approve the annual budget, because ultimately the budget should be a reflection of the policies that they have set and the strategic priorities that they have identified. So right now, City Council has 5 strategic priorities that they've had for the last several years. They meet annually in January at the annual strategy meeting and confirm or update their strategic priorities for the year ahead. These 5 tend to remain the same. They might change on the periphery, but in general, these are sort of their core 5 areas that are their priorities. So we have great neighborhoods, safe communities, transportation and planning, workforce development, and well-managed government. And each of these areas has a corresponding City Council subcommittee that meets monthly to talk about issues and policies in each of these areas. City Council also has strategic initiatives. And so the goal there is to really take specific concepts, like a specific issue in the community, something that they want to address, and have it work across their strategic priorities. So to make sure that they are collaborating and working across to address an issue holistically. And that's really what we're going to be talking about tonight, is 3 of their strategic initiatives. So just to make a little bit of a connection to the budget process, our property tax dollars support our capital program, and about a quarter of your property tax that comes to the city goes to support capital efforts. And so tonight, when we're talking about housing and when we're talking about mobility, they're not exclusively funded by capital programs, but capital funding really supports the lion's share of that work. And workforce development is really sort of the thread through it all. And so the primary use of those capital dollars is through our bond program, our GO bond, general obligation. We tend to present those to the voters every other year. We just presented one in November of 2024. So what happens is the manager proposes a bond plan as part of the budget process. Council then can tweak and adjust it. Ultimately, they either approve or disapprove it in June. And then the following November, it's on a referendum for the residents to vote up or vote down. And they vote on 3 separate bonds. They vote on a transportation bond, a neighborhood bond, and a housing bond. So this past bond in 2024 was the largest in the city's history at $400 million. It also had the largest housing bond in city history at $100 million. And so I have these projects up here, not that you need to read through them and pay attention, but it's just, it's an example of the kinds of projects that we execute within each of these bond programs. And so tonight, as we talk about these 3 strategic initiatives that fit into the broader strategic priorities that council has, it's mobility, it's housing, and it's jobs. And so we like to say that everyone needs a safe place to live, a good job, and a way to get between the two. And so that's really how these 3 special initiatives work together to build our community stronger. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ed McKinney first, who's going to talk about mobility. Ed is our special assistant to the city manager on mobility. So he'll give us a brief overview, and then I'll turn it over to Rebecca Hefner, who is our director of housing and neighborhood services, to talk a little bit about affordable housing. And then last but not least, we'll go to Danielle Frazier, who's our special assistant to the city manager on workforce development. And once each of them has an opportunity to give an overview of their area, that's when we'll move into our breakout rooms. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to Ed now.
Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, again, Ed McKinney with the city manager's office, been leading a lot of our mobility efforts over the last year or so. And so what I wanted to do tonight is share that work and talk a little bit about how it relates to our larger and strategic priorities that Hannah talked about, and what it looks like from a funding standpoint in the long term. If you go to the next slide, this is just a recap of what Hannah just shared. So it is an important reminder for us. And as you'll see in this presentation, as Rebecca and Danielle talk about both housing and jobs, these things are related. And so we view our transportation investment as really an investment in all of these things. We make sure that we're connecting these larger goals that the city council has. If you go to the next slide. So what have we been doing over the last several years to get to what we call our transportation plan? So there's sort of the way we describe it in these 3 volumes. And so we first started with answering a question that council and the community had for us, which is, where are our needs? How would we document all of the places that we need investment, the places that we're seeing congestion, the places that are missing sidewalks? And so we cataloged all of that to kind of sort of get a foundation for where our investment really should be going. The reality of that, as you can imagine, is that's a big list. And so we have needs across a very fast growing city. And so we had to figure out a way to prioritize and focus where we would invest to really have the most impact in our community. So the second part was our approach. How would we find a way to sort of strategically invest in particular areas around the city? And I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. The last piece of this is what we call our volume 3, which is our plan. So we presented this to our city council in their annual retreat just this past January. And what this document is essentially the full plan that talks about all the potential projects across the city, how we would focus and prioritize those in specific areas. And it starts to map out how we would fund those in the long term over a 30-year period. And I'll talk a little bit about that relative to the potential for new funding with an additional sales tax for transit and transportation. If you go to the next slide, I'll dive into a little bit more detail on that the way we would prioritize and focus our investment. So we came up with a strategy around what we're calling strategic investment areas. And what we did is we started with all of those needs, but then we looked at where are sort of the key locations where many of those needs align. So where are there places where there's congestion? Where are there places that there are safety needs? Where are there gaps in our sidewalk system? And when you connect challenges for our transportation investment, and those led us to a series of locations. So you see these aligned on this map. So we have identified 22 areas, what we call strategic investment areas, that have a range of projects. We try to be very focused in these locations, make sure that we define projects that were scalable. So we could do big things, we could do small things, fast and slow. We can make investment over the short term and the long term. They're tied to our priorities. They're tied to our measurable ways to advance our goals around congestion and safety. And then we also understood that over a 30-year period that we needed to be adaptable. So this is a what we call a blueprint for our investment, but that blueprint is adaptable and will be informed with additional community engagement and guiding as development occurs over time. If you go to the next slide, I'll give you a little bit more detail about what that looks like across the city. This is a snapshot of all of those areas described. In this case, we're sort of outlining them council district by council district. I'll show you a link at the end of this to dive into all of these things in more detail. You see on the right side, kind of a by the numbers example of the kinds of things that we would do. And when you add up everything that's in that blueprint, this is the scale of investment. So there's miles of new street extensions that we would make. There's intersection improvements across the city that would address things like congestion. We've got over 70 miles of locations that we would put in new street lighting, hundreds of miles of new sidewalk. And so this gives you an example of the impact of our cataloging our needs, having a strategy that focuses where we would invest, and then literally having measurable expectations around the investment that we would make. Keep going. Next slide just gives you a little, continue to go into a little bit more detail. What we did this past year is, as Hannah mentioned earlier, the bonds that were just passed this last year, part of that package was a $55 million program for these strategic investment areas. And it was a way to start to test how that program would work. And so we picked 2 of those 22 areas and dove into those to get into a detailed action plan for projects and investments. So this is a zoom in on one of those areas. This is in the far east area of Charlotte, the Harrisburg Road corridor. That's 485 is on that right side of the map, and Albemarle Road is on the left side. So you see Harrisburg Road in the middle. The message here again is what to describe is that it's a series of investments. So we know that there's gaps in sidewalks, there are pedestrian crossings, there's new signals, there's investment we can make in our transit, bus stops and improvements. All of those things are small, but when you do them in a strategic location, like this example, you actually have major sort of cumulative impact across a corridor. So it's not necessarily about one big project. It's about taking our investment, tying it to a strategy across an area and doing that investment in a way that's both short-term and long-term, but with a goal of making this a safer, walkable, more efficient transportation corridor connected to the community. So this is just one example of how that work would play out over the 22 areas across the city. If you go to the next slide. Now, let me talk a little bit about how this would scale up over time. So you may or may not be familiar, but there's been a discussion over the last several years about our need regionally around transportation funding. That's not just for roads and it's not just for transit, it's really for both. And so in this case, the conversation that's been had with the county, the towns, and the city is the idea and potential for an additional 1 cent sales tax that would fund transportation investment across the county, not just in our transit systems. So it would certainly be a way to build and invest in our rail corridors and our bus system. But for the things we're talking about here tonight, it's also a way to invest and fund the things I've just described. And so the way this would play out is there's a funding source from that sales tax, a portion of which would come to the city for our road investment. In this case, this is describing what that investment scale would look like over a 30-year period. So with the potential of this 1 cent sales tax, the city of Charlotte would potentially get over $5 billion over a 30-year period to invest in our transportation infrastructure, all the things I've just described. So we would invest in those strategic investment areas. There's large projects that we would do along major corridors. There's partnerships we would continue to do with development as it occurs, where we're getting the benefit of private investment with our public investment. There's lots of things we would do around innovation in our transportation system, signal synchronization, working with our technology to make our system work in a more efficient way. And then ultimately, we would continue to build in the programs of transportation across the city, things we are already doing in our bond programs around sidewalks and safety and intersections. And so this sort of paints the picture of what the larger opportunity is around funding on all the things that we're doing at the city and connected larger in the long term to our transit system, both the rail investment and improving our bus operations and system. Go to the next slide. I think that sort of wraps it up. I want to rest here on the QR codes. If you go to this link, you can learn all about the details of this blueprint. You can go into all sorts of locations across the city and see the kinds of projects that we've identified. So you can look into your neighborhood and see the projects. You can get details and certainly learn more about the longer term strategy and understand this kind of vision we have for transportation investment across the city. So that's a quick dive into our vision for transportation investment. And I think what I'll do is turn it over to talk about housing, and I'll turn it over to Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Becca, you're muted.
How about that? I didn't want Cherry to feel bad that she was the only one. So here we go. I'll start again. I'm Rebecca Hefner, the Director of Housing and Neighborhood Services at the City of Charlotte. And I'm glad to be here with you all tonight. I recognize some names and familiar faces on this community engagement session. So glad to see you all. Next slide, please. So as Hannah shared, the City of Charlotte really works across the entire continuum of affordable housing. We partner with the county, the state, nonprofit partners, our development partners throughout the community to implement a whole range of activities that create affordable, high quality housing for low and moderate income households in Charlotte. The efforts really stabilize households that are at risk, are designed to mitigate displacement and also foster economic mobility within our community. So as Hannah shared, the $100 million housing bond is our primary source of funding. Thank you, voters. It's a really historic, double the amount of housing bond that had previously been approved, but really represents a commitment over more than 5 years of our city council to increase their investment in affordable housing. So starting in 2001 with a housing trust fund of 15 million every 2 years, and then in 2018, 50 million every 2 years, and then in 2024, 100 million. So a really incredible investment in affordable housing. In addition, the city receives funds from federal grants. We also have other local funds that we leverage. And then the city has a transit-oriented development bonus program that's part of the Unified Development Ordinance, and we collect fee in lieu through that program for affordable housing. The next slide, please. So the real kind of cornerstone of the city's housing initiatives is the Housing Trust Fund. Again, this was established in 2001. It leverages general obligation bond dollars, and the fund is really important in providing what we call bridge financing or gap financing in both rental and homeownership developments. The Housing Trust Fund is also used for the creation of supportive housing options for individuals that are in need of wraparound services to support their daily living. The bond issuances every 2 years, and since its inception, the Housing Trust Fund has created and preserved over 13,000 housing units in the city of Charlotte. And those housing units are deed restricted for typically at least 30 years, sometimes for as much as 99 years, which is the longest amount of time that our state legislature will allow deed restrictions on properties. So the Housing Trust, previous slide, I had one more note to make. So the Housing Trust Fund, the $100 million bond, we opened our first request for proposals for housing developments this spring or this winter, and we'll be taking some recommendations to council in a couple of weeks. But we've already had over $80 million in requests for that $100 million. So that won't all move forward in this first round, but it just illustrates the need in the community, as well as the ability for our partners to deliver quickly on housing. Okay, next slide. So what I think is really exciting about working in the affordable housing space right now is the evolution that we've seen in terms of the way that our council invests these funds. So on the left here, this was an image from our 20-year anniversary of the Housing Trust Fund in 21-22. And in those first 20 years, we did a lot of great work as a city, but our focus was really on housing unit production. How do we put the most number of units on the ground in Charlotte? And then starting with this last bond, City Council has leaned in to what we frame up as a more holistic focus on resident outcomes. So they adopted a housing funding policy last September that will be used to guide the investments they make of that $100 million. And that housing policy is focused around three primary goals: economic mobility for residents, neighborhood affordability, and residential stability, which we sometimes think of as being able to stay in place. And what's so important about this conversation tonight, where we're looking at housing, jobs, and mobility all together, is that we can't achieve any of these resident outcomes without the jobs and mobility part of this conversation. And so all of these things really work together to help our council and help our resident achieve these more holistic outcomes. And if you're interested in what that looks like and how we accomplish it, join me in the breakout room. I look forward to telling you more. But for now, I'm going to pass the mic on to Danielle Frazier. And Danielle, I would just remind you to unmute before you speak.
Thank you, Rebecca. Duly noted. Can everyone hear me? Awesome. Again, I am Danielle Frazier, and I lead the Office of Workforce Development. Excited to be here with you tonight and talk about something, of course, that is near and dear to my heart. And so if you can go to the next slide, you're going to see this slide once again. You've seen it already twice. Hannah has explained it, as well as Ed. And so I think hopefully this affirms that we are all aligned, because we did these all separately. But again, I think it's important. Rebecca just mentioned, right? This is what our city manager and city leadership will call the three-legged stool. And so jobs as well as workforce development is, I'm bringing up the rear with that third leg of this stool and what makes this work so connected and important. Next slide, please. I would imagine all of us on this call are familiar with a study that came out about 10 years ago called, we affectionately call it the Chetty study, but it was a Harvard study that was led by the economics professor Raj Chetty. Released it back in 2014, and it ranked Charlotte 50 out of 50 for economic mobility against other large cities, which meant only 4 folks that were born in poverty only had a 4.4% chance of rising out of the lowest income quintile to rising to the highest income quintile. And so, as you all know and can imagine, our community, gathered together, and some good work has happened since then. And so there was a newer study that was released last year in fall of 2024 that showed Charlotte had made some significant increases in not being 50 anymore, but being 38, and being ranked one of the top 3 cities of increasing in economic mobility. While we certainly have a journey to go. We have not arrived, but we as the city would like to think that some of the things that we've done and we've implemented and things that you've already heard, whether it's through housing and things you'll hear through workforce, that have contributed to this factor. And so a lot of the programs, especially from a workforce development standpoint, that I'll share with you later on, hopefully if you join my session, was on the heels of a lot of this work in this study and report that came out some years ago. Next slide. So workforce development came about when council made workforce development one of their strategic initiatives a couple of years ago. And so last year in May, we established the first ever Office of Workforce Development. And so our office supports two different functions, if you will. One, organizational talent development. So that's how we support our 8,500 city employees across our organization on their career journey within the city of Charlotte. And then the other is community workforce development. And that's how we support our external talent through leveraging our community partners and investing in training and employment programs that help individuals get the skills, get the skills to get a good job, to be able to afford, again, housing and other things that are so critical and important to be able to participate in our city's economy here in Charlotte. And so I'll share a little bit more again of the programs that are supported through each one of these a little later on in our breakout sessions, but wanted to share that our office is duly focused on both how we support our internal talent within the city, as well as how we're supporting and contributing to helping our external talent and our city talent to get access to the resources that they need to get a good job. Next slide. So excited that City Council on this past Monday approved our workforce development strategic plan. And so over the last year, the Office of Workforce Development has been putting this plan together of how we will impact workforce development in a greater way. And so our vision of this plan and our mission, you'll see, is here. Our vision is to cultivate a vibrant, diverse, and skilled workforce system that enables residents to obtain sustainable employment and businesses to be able to access that skilled talent. And our mission and how we want to do this is to champion innovative and evidence-based workforce initiatives and solutions that meet the dynamic needs of our employees, of our community talent, which is our residents, as well as our business community. One of the things I want to mention here is that the city of Charlotte is not, we're not into direct service, right? So we're not here to deliver these programs directly, but yet we just want to be a catalyst and be able to support the great programs that are already existing in our community and in our partners, to be able to leverage those and invest in those who are training the talent, developing the talent, and connecting them to sustainable employment. And so we're excited about this plan. We have, you can go to the next slide. I think I'm sharing the focus areas here. So our plan outlines 3 focus areas, as well as we have a number of strategies. I think we have 9 total, 3 in each area that we will implement over the next several months. You'll see in the top right-hand corner of this, part of our work in this process was to say and identify what is the city's role in this workforce development ecosystem. There is a lot of great work happening, a lot of partners, and we wanted to make sure we differentiated ourselves with the others, because we're not here to duplicate efforts. We're here to complement and to actually help to scale and enhance what's already here, or be creative and innovative with new programming that may not exist. And so we look at ourselves, if you look at this image, we look at ourselves as a connector, right? Helping to connect our businesses to our talent, or our talent to community resources that are needed. We're a convener. We bring together the community stakeholders to the table to talk about workforce development challenges and solutions. We're an investor. So again, we support programming by issuing grants so that organizations can apply that are doing workforce development efforts. We'd like to consider ourselves a leader in this space, and a national leader at that, and a thought leader in how we, again, how we do workforce development internally with our own city employees, or how we're helping to support our external partners in the community, and also an influencer. And so if you see these focus areas here, The first one is career pathway access and awareness. And so we want to play a bigger role in how do we make sure our community, starting from our K through 12 onto our adult workforce, is understanding of what those careers are, what are the industries in demand, what are the jobs in demand here now and in the future, and how do we just help to tell that message in a greater way and through our outlets. Number two is skill development and credential attainment. And so again, that comes through a lot of our investing in specific programs in our community that are helping to develop and to help individuals to get the credentials they need in these respective industries in demand in our community. The third is job placement and career advancement. And so ultimately, right, all of this is great, but do people get a job? Do they get a sustainable job? Do they get a job that makes a livable wage so that they can afford all of the things that are needed to live in our city? And so these are the three areas that we will be focused on. You'll see the below arrow where it says data-driven and employer-informed. So everything about this plan and that we do from a workforce development standpoint, we want to make sure that what we invest in and what we support is really following what industry needs are. And so there's a lot of data out there for all my data geeks. I love data. I know Rebecca does too. But we have access to databases, right, that tell you where the labor market is and where the needs are. But our employer community and our business partnerships are so important and critical in validating this data to say, yeah, you know what, nurses are still needed, or you know what, we need more folks in electrical and HVAC. And so we work very closely with our businesses to ensure that these jobs are here and these jobs will be here. And that helps us to guide where our investments will be and where we really need to lean in to make sure that we're investing in training and resources and programs that are really building and getting our folks everything that they need to get that sustainable employment. And so I know that was kind of quick, but that was just a snapshot, and I will dive deeper into what some of our strategies are next in our breakout sessions, and hope that you all, hope that some of you will join. And so I think with that, I'm passing it back to Cherry.
You are absolutely correct. So I saw that there were a lot of questions in the chat already, which really encourages me with this new format that we're having for our engagement this evening. So I will be opening breakout sessions. There will be 3 rooms, one for each of our presenters on mobility, housing, and workforce development. You will see 3 small dots in the bottom of your screen, right beside your end call button. If you click that, you will be able to join a breakout session. If you happen to be on a mobile device, your view will more than likely look like this. You will still have the 3 ellipses and you'll be able to join the session. You are able to jump in between. I think my audio is not the best audio in the entire world. All right, so I'll talk loud. You'll be able to jump in between rooms. So if you would like to visit a couple, then feel free to go in between, and there will be a couple of miniature presentations within our sessions as well. So with that,
this call is no longer being recorded.
Stop sharing the screen, and I will open our breakout rooms.
Hello, anyone there?
Yes.
So how do you join a breakout session if you're dialing in?
Awesome. You know what? Which room are you interested in going to? And I can move you to it.
Oh, perfect. I'd like to join mobility.
All right. And if there's anyone else that would like to join a different session, then if you'll let me know. If you come off mute, I can put you in that room.
All right. I just got a message from WebEx telling me to press *2. Thank you very much.
Hey, Sherry. I
I would also like to join the mobility room as well.
All right, thank you. You're on your way. Transportation, you are on your way. All right. Anyone else, Gwen for me or Elaine? You can feel free to drop it in the chat and I'll also see your room selection there.
Can you hear me?
Say that one more time.
I need to go into the mobility one.
All right, moving you there now. In studio, we can cut our live feed.